Hey guys, TGKS Productions. So I have a Last of Us Part 2 video for you today, and I want to just go over the first part of this series that Naughty Dog started last week or last Wednesday on May 13th. And essentially, it's this four-part series they're going to be doing over the next, I guess at this point, 3 weeks, leading up to or close to the release of The Last of Us Part 2. It's going to be happening, I believe, every Wednesday. As you can see here, the schedule that I'm going to put up on the screen here. If you look here on May 13th, which was last Wednesday, they did one basically titled Inside the Story, going a little bit more in detail, I guess, with the story of the game. And then tomorrow, May 20th, they are going inside the gameplay. Next Wednesday, May 27th, inside the details. And then the week after that, June 3rd, inside the world. So basically, just doing this four-part series. It's going in a little bit more detail with those four, I guess, titles stated there, the four parts here. And I want to just cover this. I want to talk about this, break down the inside the story here. I apologize I didn't get this out a little bit earlier. This past week was really rough. I had a lot of finals, a lot of classes I'd attend, so I didn't really have a chance to break this down, but I promise I'll have the next three out much earlier than this one. But I did want to cover this on the channel, sort of, I guess break it down and review it. Now, essentially with this first part, inside the story, Naughty Dog pretty much just sort of talks about where, I guess, mostly the characters of Ellie and Joel, which are obviously the main characters of The Last of Us Part 1, where they're sort of currently at in The Last of Us Part 2. To be honest, if you watched a lot of the trailers for The Last of Us, I really would say you probably know most of what is currently going on and what they talked about in this video. Pretty much they just say that they're about, 25 years into this, I guess, pandemic or outbreak that are turning turning people into these humanoids or zombies. And pretty much, that Ellie and Joel are in this community. They live in this community of Jackson, and sort of that's mostly what I would say they state in this video. I know Neil Druckmann, the director, he says that they want to make sure this is a standalone story to where it sort of takes its own path, but still, I think his exact words, additive to the first one, so that if you played both, they sort of run together. So that's mostly what they talk about in this video. Don't go into too much detail, really, I would say fairly broad, but there's a few, I'd say, interesting things that are mentioned in this video that I wanted to sort of talk about. The first of which, in the beginning, Neil Druckmann, he basically states that, this story, basically, I think in his words, he said that your actions are going to be, begot other, acts are going to basically have consequences to them, which is very interesting. I really like that aspect. I love that aspect of video games. I think it brings you, the player, more into the game, because obviously, even in real life, your day-to-day choices result in, certain consequences, or your decisions that you make in real life, obviously result with certain consequences. And the same thing goes with The Last of Us Part 2, which I really like.
We're hoping to create a story that makes a commentary about the cycle of violence and how acts can beget other acts, and show all the different aspects that could come out of it. Not necessarily good or bad, just the different consequences of one's actions.
I'm gonna find, and I'm gonna kill every last one of them.
Another thing Neil Druckmann mentions, and this is very interesting because this, I would say, feeds into, I don't want to say necessarily feeds into, but it sort of references, I guess, the controversy that's going on right now and what I would say Naughty Dog tried to avoid. Towards the beginning of this, he states that, he says that there's always the fear of messing up, I guess, what made The Last of Us Part 1 so good. And the reason why this is interesting, because a lot of fans right now, because of the leaks, would argue this. And I'm not really going to take a stance on this myself, because I still have to play through The Last of Us Part 1. So, I don't think it would be fair for me to make an argument about that. But a lot of fans, I would say, would argue and say, yeah, they did mess up what was there in The Last of Us Part 1, which is definitely interesting. And he even sort of references this a little bit later in the video, which actually I would say directly references the leaks, which I did eventually end up looking into. I'm not going to obviously state them in this video just because of hearing so many people talking about them. Obviously, you can't take anybody's opinion 100%, but I've heard a lot of people that are really dedicated fans talking about this. I was like, the fact that they weren't even considering buying the game, to me, that was like, wow, to be that dedicated and you're not even going to buy the game. there's something up there that's very interesting. So I was just curious, but this, I guess, event that, in sort of the cycle of the story, or the, I guess, the path or the route that the story takes is sort of referenced a little bit later in this video as well. But yeah, a lot of fans would definitely argue that, yeah, Naughty Dog may have actually messed up, what made The Last of Us Part 1 so good.
There's always the fear that, when you made something great and you're going to go back to it, you're going to mess it up. You're going to mess what made it so special. The test for us was like, can we come up with a story that could, one, stand on its own and be meaningful and have weight? The same kind of feeling we had when we came up on the story for the first one. But also now, because it's part 2, it has to be additive. It has to take the first one into consideration, that if you played both, then you get like a bigger narrative.
So you can see right there pretty much what he was stating, what I was talking about in this video. And as I mentioned even a little bit later in the video, or in this inside of the story, he even sort of directly references the event, and I believe this was the one that was leaked, that sort of, I would say, creates the story arc in a way, or the, like I said earlier, the path or the route that the story is taking. And this is something that a lot of fans aren't necessarily happy with.
Dina, where are you?
And then Jackson and Ellie are shaken by a violent event. It really changes Ellie's day-to-day life, and now just living is no longer enough. Like, there's these people that have wronged her, and she wants retribution. And you as a player are going to want retribution for what these people have done. And then you go off on this journey that leads you to Seattle, where now you're like stuck in the city that has these warring factions, and they're both fighting over the spoils of Seattle, and you're stuck there in the middle looking for this very specific group that has wronged you. And that's the concept of the story.
So pretty much what Neil Druckmann right there mentions as far as the story is concerned definitely seems to reference the leaks, or this tragic event that happens. Definitely seems to be, I would say, very similar to what the leaks have come out to be. So that is definitely very interesting there. He also goes on to say a little bit later after that, or really towards the tail end of this, how a lot of your, I guess, decisions in the game, or a lot of what happens, definitely is going to raise a lot of, like, as he said, philosophical questions. Basically, sort of the right and wrong of what is right and what is wrong. Because you have to remember, at this point, due to the pandemic that they were exposed to, and sort of this apocalypse or apocalyptic world, obviously the society that we know it as and what they would know it as doesn't exist anywhere, or anymore. So, obviously what we consider right and wrong is very different than what is considered right and wrong in that world. There's no more civilized society, or at least not on the same level is there is today, with the a governmental system. The things that we know is a civilized society isn't necessarily present in the Last of Us setting. And it also states that, because I know this isn't really an open world game, but they do say this is going to expand a lot more. So I'm definitely excited about that, obviously, at least for me, because coming from being a fan of open world games, playing GTA and Red Dead, obviously, that'll be nice to have a little bit more of an expansive world, not necessarily maybe on an open world level, but more expansive. So I'm definitely excited about that. And there's there's a number of other things that were mentioned in this video by other team members of, or from Naughty Dog, or of The Last of Us Part 2. But I would say mostly I've covered all the main details in this video. That basically that Naughty Dog has come out to say as far as this first part of their 4-part series. But in any case, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you found it interesting, and I apologize for being so late on it. I do my best to not be as late on obviously the next 3 they're going to be releasing. And of course, I will start playing through The Last of Us Part 1 very, very soon, and uploading parts to it on the channel in preparation for The Last of Us Part 2. As always, please don't forget to like, subscribe, share this video, be sure to comment if you have any questions, and have a great day.